Thanks very much for that, David. Well, it's now time to welcome Allyson Hewitt to the stage. Allyson has assisted hundreds of social ventures to become economically sustainable and to increase their social impact. She's initiated and implemented public policy to support social enterprise and has developed a range of social innovation programs at Mars in Toronto. Tonight's oration follows 3 weeks of intense engagement, as you just heard from David, with individuals and organisations across private, public and non-government sectors here in South Australia. Indeed, she's met with many of you who are in the room here tonight, and we are all very excited to hear her comment on what she has called South Australia, positioned for leadership in the social economy. Please welcome Allyson Hewitt to the stage.
Thank you for coming in and managing the rain. And it's just like the first rain I've had since I've been here, so it figures it's on tonight. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, everything's good? Okay, thank you so much. Terrific. So David, I really want to start by saying I deeply appreciate the work of you, your vision and your leadership in this area, and the Herculean efforts of the staff of the Don Dunstan Foundation. It's been pretty wonderful to be here. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a thing in front of me, so I'm going to have to keep flipping back like that. So I'm inviting you to join me on this journey from Canada to Australia. I have found people in Adelaide to be so incredibly kind and generous and welcoming, and it has been a pleasure to hang out with all of you, and I really look forward to continuing this journey. But you know, I've come much further than Toronto. I've come from Mars. That's the first joke. And so this is me listening to the governor with Evelyn O'Loughlin from the Volunteering SA, NNT. And listen, you don't have time. The best thing about the Thinker is you don't have time to go to 60 plus meetings, and it's only been 2.5 weeks, David. I know it feels like, but it's only been 2.5 weeks. So I wanted to offer you the chance to hear what I heard from you, what you think of the social economy. So let's start with a couple of quotes. No one understands what we're talking about when we say social capital or social innovation. We need to map the social innovation ecosystem. We need a shared narrative and accessible language and the business case for promoting the social economy. So Jeff Mulligan, who was the thinker in residence in 2007, 2008 around social innovation, says that social innovation is social in its means and its ends. And it's the simplest kind of definition. And if we think about how do we do good better, then that works just as well. But with the help of our incredibly good friends at TAXI, the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, we've built on the work of SIG, or Social Innovation Generation. I'm probably mucking up all my names here. SIG, TAXI, there are all these little acronyms all over the place. But we've started by creating a glossary of terms. So if someone says, what do you mean by the social economy? We're putting this online, and we're actually encouraging people to contribute and keep it up to date. We also held a historic mapping workshop, again with our friends from TAXI, and the results of that are pending. So we've been very busy. The glossary's going, the workshop was amazing. We still need to develop the business case, including the cost of not doing anything or holding on to the status quo, which I would suggest is probably not even an option. And of course, we need to continue to build the social capital community, the work that has been started by our friends at Social Capital. So many of you may know this. It is the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Map by Paul Daly of the City of Adelaide. And we didn't want to start fresh. We started with his work, and we're going to leverage that to capture what's happening in this social economy and add to it, with particular columns around impact investing or measuring impact or that kind of thing. We talked a lot. And here's just a few slides that I think really resonated with groups, just for those of you that haven't had the chance to sit in an audience and hear me ramble on. This is what David talked about, a bit of a spectrum where the world is going from not-for-profits that were 100% grant dependent to for-profits who were 100% about the single bottom line. In fact, pressure is being put on both ends of this spectrum to think about the messy middle. Everybody's encouraged to move along, no matter where you are, move along towards the middle. So if you're social first, you think about how you're generating income or setting up social enterprises. And if you're money first, You need a social license to operate. What does your CSR program like, or creating shared value program, or in fact, this wonderful new corporate form like B Corps that are happening in that blended value space? We talked about scaling. When we talked about scaling, we often think about it as growth, scaling out, more, franchises, do more. But in fact, in the world of social innovation, you can also scale up, which is really about looking at policies and laws and what are the levers that we can push within government. And finally, the big goal is how do we scale deep? How do we get to culture change? How do we change people's behaviors and hearts and minds so they do differently? And finally, this is something we lovingly call the periodic table of systems change. What this means is that change has to happen at all levels. And sometimes in the nonprofit sector, we forget that the market is a huge force for change. When we think about scale, we have to think about opportunities to prototype. So all the time, for those of you that were just at the gallery, we heard about a program that was implemented with the best of intentions. That's not the way to do it. Don't go right to scale. Start small, pivot, learn, course correct, and then you'll get to the place where you need to be as long as you're engaging users and eventually get there. But sort of designing programs in an ivory tower or in a policy shop just doesn't cut it anymore. We've got to think differently about how we do this work. The next one is really about the policy lever and how we need to get the evidence, always remembering that evidence is necessary but not sufficient. And finally, where's the receptor capacity? If we have these great innovations, who's absorbing them? How do we make sure they're actually systems that are ready to take them and run with them? No point just developing very cool stuff if it's not going to be used. So Adelaide, how do you see yourself? A few more quotes, and David referenced some of them. Adelaide's founding was a social experiment, a planned community different from the other places in Australia. We are not Sydney or Melbourne. We are conservative and afraid of risk. We complain and then we accept the bridge, the oval. Now, the Adelaide Plains were inhabited by the Kaurna tribe before the European settlers, and it's on their land we have the chance to build a future that works for all. We need inclusive growth. We need to understand and celebrate what makes Adelaide different and unique, and we will not define ourselves by what we are not. Going back to Jeff's Thinker in Residence program, he noted amazing innovations that came out of Adelaide and came out of South Australia. The problem was they ebb and flow. This is the concept of snapback, which says when you have the dominant system pulling on both ends, no matter what the innovation is in the trough, if you think of that as a marble in the trough, there'll be attractors pulling it back to the status quo. And if we don't get that trough deep enough, those innovations will slide right back out again. And that's what happens time after time after time. We have to get, and I know this sounds like a pipe dream, but we have to get into a space where it's not driven solely by political agendas. We need to deepen the trough. When I was picked up at the airport, which was terrific, by Trish and Carolyn, they came right up to the gate. I said, "Where's security? How would you get up to the gate?" And they said, "It's Adelaide. Life is easy." Now, it's not easy for everybody, but it's easy for the vast majority of us. And that's pretty incredibly wonderful. And although there are some signs of it, as Davis referenced, there's not enough of a burning platform to drive us to where we need to go. We do have slow job growth and rising social challenges, but in fact, there's another quote. It's not attributed. I'll just say he's in the audience, but I'm not attributing it. In Adelaide, you can get in touch with anyone you want. The pace of change is glacial. So how do we turn that into a strength? It's not 6 degrees of separation here, it's about 0.5. And not only that, lots of people are married to each other, have families. It's incredible. So that is an incredible strength for us to leverage. And maybe that glacial pace gives us something the rest of the world is missing. Maybe it gives us a chance to think. And there is growth, but it's not in mining and manufacturing, but it's in the area that David talked about. It's the social economy, the rationale for this residency. So Adelaide, I just want you to remember that you can do hard things. You always have. Just don't get complacent, and don't forget to tell the stories of excellence. Even while the systems are fragmented and sometimes broken, there are pockets that we have to celebrate. Here's just a few. The Indigenous Prosperity Fund, Fluid Solar, which is up near the Stretton Centre, a building that is 100% off the grid, and now using this technology to build affordable housing. Renew Adelaide, while not perfect, is an amazing innovation. And up in Holden, and we talked about the Mitsubishi plant, David, I would say in Holden, what they've tried to do is look around the world, which is something that Adelaide is spectacular at, for best-in-class transition strategies. 80% of the people who've already been transitioned have done so appropriately. That's about 200. There's about 900 more to go. But what they have done, what they used to do is give you an envelope, and it's a terrible situation, 900, it's terrible, but you used to get an envelope and say good luck. Now what they've done is deconstructed the assets of their employees. Project management, standardization of systems, all of these kind of things that are actually of value to others in the community. And then they bring employers in and sell Holden employees' skills. It's a really new and unusual way, and I don't know anybody else globally that's doing it this deep. Far from perfect, still a tragic situation, but trying to use innovation to make the best of it. And I would also say the Thinker in Residence program, which is really it's a very interesting program. And I have to say that the stars are not the thinkers. The stars are Adelaide, because Adelaide is willing to listen to others. And believe me, that's rare. Because, this is going to be shocking, can you read that? It says, Adelaide is a public sector town. I know, right? And so here's what I was absolutely stunned at when I came here, which was the level of dependence on government. Because there are real pros and cons to that. So we need to be more critical of that particular perspective and look to continue to create opportunities in the community, as has been done, as David mentioned, by the Dunstan Foundation with cross-sectoral ownership of this initiative. The challenges are, we don't have a joined-up government. We have the costs borne in one area and saved by another, like health promotion and health. There's no space for disruptive innovation. People are incentivized to say no to minimize risks. And innovation is often not only not rewarded, it can sometimes be punished because Treasury Board will claw back any kinds of efficiency savings. In the political world, those that work for them often tell them what they want to hear. Nonprofits don't want to rock the boat, they want that year-end funding. And everything is tied to election cycles. And speed is such a challenge. They have to do things so quickly, they don't have the time to get out and work with people on the ground. Here's one of my favorite quotes. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. We do the opposite. We rush to solve. Where's the space? Where's the time to think? And I'd also love this quote, which is, no problems can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. If you're not getting out and having discussions with people who see the world differently from you, who disagree with you, then we're stuck in this kind of paradigm. But the opportunity is the history of innovation that comes from government is incredible, especially in this state. We have opportunities to leverage incredible initiatives like Smart Cities Agenda, and there's a huge opportunity around social value procurement. How does government buy not only local, but buy from social enterprises? But what we need is to make that easy for them to do the right thing. So we need lists of social services who are capable of providing those services. And there's great models already in place, and we can learn from them. We need to ensure we have an appropriate and enabling regulatory environment for charities to generate revenue and secure impact investing. I come from a country with an Elizabethan charity law. It's crazy, and we're continually working on that, and I think there's lots of opportunities here to make sure that environment is enabling. And despite all of that, I would say everybody that I've met in government is absolutely doing their best, and we need to advocate with empathy. We don't go at them with placards and hit them over the head for what they can't do. We go at them with empathy and understand what we can do together. That's the huge opportunity. And I also want to point out there's a massive movement to public sector innovation labs. And TAXI's in early discussions with people in government here, and I think there's lots to learn from what's happening around the world, particularly this group, Mind Lab in Denmark, which has really set the standard. You think it can't be done? This is the Canadian cabinet, where Trudeau announced that he's got a cabinet that looks like Canada. Apparently there's been a new law passed since I left that says we can't get back into Canada unless we show at least one Trudeau slide. So this is my requisite thing done there. So let's talk about corporates. So corporates, I believe, have an economic imperative. There are organizations like JP Morgan who have a huge impact in Detroit, where they're helping to grow the local economy, not only through donations, but through pro bono support. Think about the expertise that's based in these corporations that we can unlock to do good better. Organizations like Unilever, where the CEO is rejecting the live and die by the quarterly statements and seeking to take a longer-term view for sustainability. It's actually good for business, and it's good for society. B Corps, which I mentioned. We had a great session with the B Corps community. Businesses that see business as a force for good, nonprofits. We got to think differently about how we work with groups like this, and we'd be well advised to spend some time understanding what drives them and how we can work together. Because we have incredible power as consumers. I want to acknowledge both Lee May and Nick Crowther from Dirt Build and Free Range Futures. They've really taken it on the chops. And one of the quotes up there is, "I'm so glad all of this is happening. I felt crazy on my own in this space." Not-for-profits are sometimes seen as cheap service providers for government. But governments and nonprofits need a new relationship that talks about co-creating solutions. We need an asset map of what can be given to nonprofits to run. So in the world of social housing, a lot is being downloaded onto the nonprofit sector. What things are being done by government that could be better done by nonprofits? Do we have an asset map of that? Is that what we want? Those are the questions we should be thinking about. We need to focus on knowledge translation. We have an aging group of folks who are running our nonprofits, as we do all around the world. What does knowledge translation look like? What are their opportunities for the intergenerational transfer of knowledge? How do we get on top of that before it's too late? And some people say, well, nonprofits are really competitive with each other. That's because we have a deficit mindset. We're told to fight over crumbs instead of baking new pies. Again, an asset-based approach. There's huge opportunities for shared services, shared staffing models, and focusing on our particular areas of expertise if we think like a system with the user at the center. And if I've heard 4 letters over the past few weeks, it's been NDIS. This has been a massive disruption to the sector and a focus on consumer-directed care, which means a change from our clients to customers. Some are ready. Innovation teams are in place. And there's a few in this audience tonight, and if you want to talk about this more, chat with Meals on Wheels, Helping Hands, Community Living Australia, and the Can Do organizations. We need to flip the old paradigm. What about a conference on the business of aging? And what about the creation of feedback loops, other than elections, to get information back to governments on what we're learning on the ground and what are the challenges? Instead of us talking to each other and complaining, what are the feedback loops that we need to put in to make these systems better? And then there's the academy. Wow, you guys have amazing post-secondary institutions. What an impressive array of programs and services. And a real strength is the ability to attract international students. But look at these, Tonsley and Stretton. And here's what I was told. Make them work better together. It's really hard to navigate the range of innovation hubs out there. So I did. I talked to them and they said, we work together. We work together all the time. We share equipment, we navigate, but that's not known outside the system. So in the innovation and entrepreneurship space, let's help people figure out how they're going to navigate the right programs. Is there a graduation system? Is there an opportunity for you to think like a system where you can share things like market intelligence, so you all don't have to have contracts around that, where you have a joint fund, where you have particular expertise, where it's really clear how to navigate from one to the other. This is Scope Global. 6,000 alumni from this program that goes overseas to learn and work with social entrepreneurs comes back to Australia, and there's no receptor capacity, there's no place for them to use that kind of talent. 6,000, it's about 500 in South Australia. Aboriginal youth are the fastest growing population. How are we planning to use that expertise? And volunteerism, apparently 86% of not-for-profits say they need more volunteers. When I met with the governor, he said, volunteering is the link to meaningful happiness. Doesn't that sound like him? I love that. But I would add, it's also about enlightened self-interest. It's about working with others so you can increase your innovation capacity. And it's about increased social cohesion and belonging. So here's a wonderful program called Studio Y. It's a youth leadership academy focused on creating the skills that we need for the 21st century. And I'm not talking artificial intelligence, I'm talking soft skills like influencing, design thinking, systems thinking, and cross-sectoral collaboration. Who's going to take up the challenge to set up this academy? There's a huge issue around financing and metrics. We need to think of new ways to finance the social economy. South Australia has no culture of philanthropy, I'm told. How do we really know if someone's making a difference? These are the challenges that are out there. But I'm going to suggest to you that there are untold private sector assets that need to be and could be unlocked for public good. One of my colleagues, Stephen Hutter, the CEO of the McConnell Foundation, will be in Adelaide in November and December. I'm going to ask him to really spend some time with you to talk about what it means to unlock public and private assets for public good and how we've been able to succeed in that. Carolyn from Taxi is helping lead that work. Next, as you all know, there's a trend to outcomes-based financing, CIBS, and it will be demanded, particularly as we experience the intergenerational transfer of wealth, that we demonstrate the impact we were able to make. Social enterprises offer real opportunities in this space, but if you're a nonprofit and you're going to take on a social enterprise, I hope you have the culture, and I hope you have the discipline and the mindset to make it a success. There's lots of stuff already happening here. About 50% nationally, I don't have South Australian data, but about 50% of not-for-profits and charities make income other than through grants. Now that could be interest or other things, but it's showing that we're going in the right direction. And we have a real opportunity to benchmark how we want to see that proceed. And there's global standards. We should be talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. I don't hear a lot of talk about that, but it's globally, and Australia can see how it's doing with others. Vital signs is how to make this available at the local level. So you know there are 10+1 economic priorities, 7 strategic priorities from the government. I don't know what our local community, what are our vital signs? So this is an example of a report where what they indicate is that for 30 years, communities have been responding to hunger with food banks and other strategies, but food bank usage shows no sign of slowing down. In fact, it's 31% higher than it was before the downturn. We need to feed the hungry people in front of us. We need to alleviate suffering. And as David said, we need to keep our feet in the soil. But where's our reaching for the stars, and how do we know what we're doing good better? We have to show that we're able to be critical on our own terms and from the community up, as well as from the government and international agencies down. You know what we need? We need a sense of the possible. If I were to wish for anything, I would not wish for wealth and power, but for the passionate sense of the potential, for the eye which ever young and ardent sees the possible. Pleasure disappoints, possibility never. Few more quotes for you. We need to see social and economic as two sides of the same coin. We need to find ways to link programs like the EDB and social inclusion. People keep knowledge to themselves. Toxic for innovation. We need to celebrate open. And look what we're doing with Brand SA. There's a million opportunities to celebrate and reward open. And how do we engage South Australians who live in rural communities? One of the greatest innovations from Canada is the Women's Institute. It's a rural social innovation. What about the stump, jump, plow? I just wanted to say that because it's such a cool term. But let's ensure that we are uncovering everything that we've got from those outside the urban areas. And look at this, the Royal Adelaide Hospital site, or the RAH. There are many, many great minds working on this site and what it could be for Adelaide. Maybe this could be our site for inclusive innovation, Adelaide style. And by that, I mean solid economic plan, social innovation, and cultural. The creative industries in this city are so strong, you could bring them together for profit, for purpose, and for participation. A place that's not focused just on ideas or even research, but going to the next step to focus on implementation and knowledge translation. Where are the global leaders in that space? We are a test city. What is that if not a place to experiment, a place of innovation? But this work needs to be curated. It's not just a case of build it and they will come. We need real and serious curation. Intermediaries and network weavers to knit together the parts that don't connect, that don't in fact even talk to each other. Innovation happens everywhere. It accelerates on the margins. But how do you see the site? Do you touch one part of it and it's a rope? Do you touch another part of it and it's a fan? We need voices at the table. Your voice. Maybe not the table, maybe around the elephant, but whatever it is, you need something on what this site can be. So what I've heard is that Adelaide can explore becoming the place to think, the place to solve complex global challenges across sectors with innovation and creativity, a safe place to experiment and take risks, to practice social R&D in all its forms. I would suggest to you it should be adjacent to government, where we share the risks and celebrate the rewards. And Jill Hicks, which many of you may know, a proud Adelaidean, feels we should call South Australia the state of mind. I love this, and this is really cheesy. I literally went outside, took a picture of someone's license plate, then I thought I better cover it up with some stuff in case they're in the audience. But the concept of a state of mind, just like I have had the privilege of doing, coming to Adelaide to think. And the RAW site may be the location for such an aspiration and such an inspiration. Combine it with another great skill that we have here of tourism, and you can create an innovation vacation opportunity. And if that sounds a bit out there, may I remind you of Schopenhauer's assertion that first, the truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Thirdly, it is accepted as self-evident. I look forward to traveling this journey with you. Here we go, my friends. Thank you very much for your time and attention.